There is a truth so raw, so uncomfortable, that most of the mainstream spiritual world would rather wrap it in glitter and bury it under affirmations than face it head-on. But we have to go there, because real spiritual awakening doesn't happen in soft candlelight with peaceful mantras. It happens in the fire. It happens when your entire identity collapses, when your beliefs shatter under the weight of lived experience, when you realize that light without darkness is just half a truth. And that's where the dark chosen ones come in, those of us who were never meant to fit into the polished, marketable version of love and light. We were forged in shadow. We were not born to float, we were born to dig, to bleed, to burn, and in doing so transcend. Not escape, transcend. The love and light movement, for all its good intentions, often becomes a spiritual bypass factory. It teaches people to chase good vibes, avoid conflict, and label anything uncomfortable as low vibration. But here's what they don't want to admit. Darkness is not low vibration. Denial is. Avoidance is. Pretending your trauma doesn't exist because you've memorized a few mantras that's not healing. That's performance. And the dark chosen ones. We're not here to perform. We're here to transform. We didn't choose this path because it was beautiful. We were thrown into the depths because our souls volunteered to bring light through the dark, not around it. And that's the first truth that gets rejected. Darkness is part of the divine. It's not the enemy. It's the womb of transformation. Look at the universe. Creation itself begins in the dark. Seeds sprout in soil, babies grow in the womb, stars are born in deep space. The entire evolutionary process is rooted in darkness. So why do we demonize it? Why do we pretend it has nothing to offer? Because it's uncomfortable. Because it doesn't sell well. Because it forces you to confront aspects of yourself you've been trained to hide. But those of us who are dark chosen ones, we were born with the blueprint. We were never allowed to look away. We were thrown into chaos early. Abuse, abandonment, death, despair, visions, nightmares, psychic attacks, societal rejection, not because we were cursed.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
This leads to the second uncomfortable truth. Dark chosen ones are not just spiritual, they're disruptive. We are the ones who walk into rooms and shift the energy without saying a word. The ones who trigger people just by existing. Not because we're trying to, but because our frequency carries truth, and truth is uncomfortable. Especially for people who have built their identity around spiritual safety, comfort, and image. We are the mirror. And what's in that mirror? Everything they're not ready to face. That's why we're often labeled as too intense, too negative, or even dangerous. Because we don't fit the Instagram-friendly version of spirituality. We don't smile through the pain. We dive into it. We don't chant over our wounds. We excavate them. And in doing so, we become what they fear most, free. Third truth. We don't need to be high vibe all the time to be powerful. The obsession with constant positivity is actually spiritual fragility. Real power is the ability to hold polarity, to sit in grief and still feel grace, to experience rage and still choose love, to acknowledge that you are both divine and deeply human, and that both are sacred. Dark chosen ones are emotional alchemists. We turn pain into purpose. We don't suppress anger, we understand it. We don't run from fear, we integrate it. And in doing so, we become whole. That's what they don't get. Wholeness isn't about being enlightened, it's about embracing your totality. And here's a hard one to swallow. Sometimes the most love and light people are the most judgmental. Because they haven't done shadow work. They've built spiritual identities that can't hold contradiction. So when they encounter someone like you, someone who's not afraid to talk about demons, trauma, death, psychic warfare, ancestral pain, they flinch. They deflect. They preach. But it's not because you're wrong. It's because you're real. And realness makes illusions tremble. That's why they reject what you say, even when it's truth wrapped in wisdom. Because it threatens the entire framework they're clinging to. Are you starting to see the pattern? The pain you've gone through, the heaviness you carry, the darkness you've survived, it's not a detour from your spiritual path. It is your spiritual path. It's the crucible that refined your soul. And now you walk with a kind of presence that can't be faked. You've earned your depth. You've bled for your wisdom. You've cried your way into clarity. That's a level of initiation no book or retreat can give you. And the love and light crowd, they don't know what to do with someone who doesn't need validation to know their power. So ask yourself, what if you weren't here to be understood by the masses? What if you were here to be a frequency disruptor? What if your life, your trauma, your tears, your rage, your silence was designed to activate something ancient in others? Not through preaching, through your presence, through your ability to show up raw, honest, and unshaken even in the face of spiritual sanitization. We need to stop pretending that only soft, sweet, smiling people are spiritual. Spirit doesn't care about your aesthetic. Spirit cares about your alignment. And alignment sometimes looks like saying no, walking away, cutting cords, calling out spiritual toxicity, choosing yourself even if it makes you the villain in their story. That's what dark, chosen ones do. We don't do it to be edgy. We do it because we have to. Because we are encoded with a mission that doesn't allow us to fake it. And that's what they hate. They hate that pain didn't break you, that you didn't dilute yourself to be accepted, that you didn't trade your truth for community. Because when you walk in your full, embodied, unapologetic darkness and light, you become a force that can't be managed. You become the one they can't control. And that, more than anything, is what exposes the illusion of their power. There's a reason why the world feels heavy when you walk into it. Why your presence alone can make others uncomfortable, even without saying a word. It's not because you're wrong. It's because you carry a frequency that threatens the illusion they've built their lives upon. You weren't born to fit into the system. You were born to dismantle it, to set fire to everything that's fake, shallow, surface level, and spiritually bypassed. That's your role, not as a destroyer for the sake of chaos, but as a purifier. You carry the frequency of fire, and fire doesn't apologize for what it burns. It's not cruel. It's cleansing. It destroys the false so the true can rise. This is where the love and light crowd gets scared. Because when you start speaking truth that doesn't sound cute or palatable, they call it negativity. They call it ego. They say you need to raise your vibration. But what they're really saying is, tone it down so you don't challenge me. They want spirituality that feels like a warm bath, not a wildfire. But dark chosen ones didn't come here to soothe people into sleep. We came to wake them up. And sometimes waking up means shaking the ground beneath their feet. Sometimes it means being the storm that uproots the very tree they've been clinging to. Do you feel that deep restlessness inside you? That sense that something in the world is deeply off? That ache that no amount of spiritual platitudes can numb? That's your fire. That's your soul knowing it came here for more than just peace. It came for truth. And truth isn't always gentle. Truth sometimes has to roar. It has to confront. It has to burn what no longer serves. That's why you've always felt like you didn't belong in the sanitized spiritual spaces. Because you were never meant to. You were meant to stand at the edge of the fire and hold it steady while the old world collapses. But here's what no one tells you. That fire you carry, it scares you too. Because it's powerful. Because it doesn't come with instructions. Because it's not always easy to know when you're healing or when you're destroying. But here's the secret. They're often the same thing. Sometimes the most healing thing you can do is destroy the lie. End the cycle. Walk away from the familiar. Burn the bridge that leads back to self-abandonment. That's spiritual maturity, not staying calm at all costs, but knowing when to let the volcano erupt because the pressure has built up for too long. The love and light crowd preaches balance, but they fear the imbalance that comes right before a breakthrough. You were designed to navigate that imbalance. You were made to walk through the fire and not flinch, to lose everything false and still rise. That's not negativity, that's power. And that power doesn't come from chanting under the moon or wearing crystals. It comes from facing yourself in the mirror when everything is falling apart and choosing to keep going, choosing to keep burning, choosing to keep becoming. So let me ask you something uncomfortable. What have you been afraid to burn? What illusion are you still protecting because it gives you a sense of safety? What masks are you still wearing to be accepted by people who wouldn't recognize your soul even if it screamed? The truth is, dark, chosen ones don't get to live shallow lives. We are called to depth. We are summoned to the underworld. And from that depth we rise not polished, not perfect, but purified. Your fire is not your enemy. It's your gift. It's the divine rage that says, this isn't right. It's the sacred grief that says, there's more than this. It's the holy rebellion that says, I will not shrink to make others comfortable. That's your frequency. That's the light hidden in your darkness. That's what makes you dangerous in the most beautiful way. Because you don't just awaken, you ignite. And in a world asleep in illusion, that's the most radical thing you can be. There's something different about you, and you've always known it. Not in an arrogant way, not in a way that screams for attention, but in a quiet, undeniable way, like a hum beneath your skin, a whisper in your blood that says, you are more than what you've been told. And here's the truth most people will never say out loud. Dark, chosen ones are born with authority. Not authority that comes from titles, money, or external success, but ancient, energetic authority. A spiritual royalty that doesn't need to be announced because it's felt. You walk into a room and people either bow to it or resist it. They don't even know why. But their spirit does, because your energy carries memory. And that memory is older than this life. You weren't made to follow. You weren't made to fit into the systems built on illusion. And that's why you've always struggled with authority that feels fake. Because your soul remembers true power, divine power. The kind of power that doesn't dominate, but liberates. The kind of power that doesn't need to be loud to be legendary. That's the power you carry in your DNA. And that's why your life has been marked with struggle. Because the world tries to break what it can't control. And your spirit, it was never meant to be controlled. This is something the love and light crowd doesn't want to admit. Some of us were born with spiritual rank. And it's not something you earn through workshops or certifications. It's something your soul agreed to carry long before this incarnation. But with that rank comes resistance. Because the Matrix doesn't reward real power, it rewards obedience. You've probably felt this tension your whole life. You walk into spaces and people either love you instantly or feel threatened. There's rarely an in-between. That's because your presence triggers something ancient in them. Some are reminded of their own power. Others are reminded of how far they've strayed from it. You might wonder, why has my path been so hard? Why have I had to lose so much just to find a little peace? And the answer is this: royalty isn't handed ease. Royalty is refined through fire. You've been prepared, not punished. Every betrayal, every shadow, every spiritual attack, it was carving you into someone who could carry the kind of energy that shifts timelines. You're not here for comfort. You're here for impact. And that impact requires depth, solitude, discernment, and strength that most people will never understand. But here's where it gets deeper. Your authority is not just for you, it's for others. You are what I call a frequency holder. You hold a specific energetic signature that reminds others of who they are. Even if they reject you, even if they hate you, they feel you. and that feeling lingers. You might say a few words, but the energy behind those words rearranges their inner world. That's why you don't need to speak loudly or often. When you're aligned, your existence is the sermon. Your presence is the prophecy. And that's what makes you unstoppable. But you have to own it. No more shrinking. No more pretending you don't know who you are. No more playing small to make others comfortable. You don't have to be aggressive or arrogant, but you do have to be honest. Honest about your knowing, honest about your gifts, honest about your vibration. Because when you own your frequency, everything changes. People start treating you differently, not because you demanded it, but because you remembered. And when you remember, the universe responds. So let me ask you something that most won't dare ask. What would your life look like if you finally accepted your spiritual royalty? If you stopped trying to fit in with people who couldn't see your crown? If you stopped waiting for permission to rise and just rose? What would shift if you realized that your darkness wasn't a flaw but a throne? That your pain wasn't punishment but preparation for your position? Dark, chosen ones are not here to be liked. We're here to be felt, to be remembered, to be the ones who carry codes that cannot be taught, only embodied. And that embodiment requires you to walk differently, to speak with intention, to move with clarity. To stop explaining your frequency to people who have no capacity to hold it. You're not here to win everyone over. You're here to activate those who are ready and walk away from those who aren't. You are unseen royalty. And the longer you pretend you're not, the more chaotic your life becomes. Because your soul won't allow you to forget anymore. That quiet voice inside you, it's not just intuition, it's command. It's the echo of lifetimes where you've led revolutions, healed nations, and carried wisdom that shifted entire worlds. And now, in this life, you're being asked to remember, not just for you, but for all those who are watching you silently, praying someone like you exists. There comes a moment on the path after all the betrayals, the spiritual disillusionment, the isolation, the nights spent questioning your sanity, when something inside you stops breaking and starts clicking. Not in a dramatic explosion, but in a quiet, irreversible shift. And in that moment you see the truth that was hidden in plain sight all along. Your darkness was never a curse. It was never something to get rid of, or heal away, or transcend. It was the key, the secret door, the encoded map. The final rebellion isn't against the world, it's against the belief that you were ever broken in the first place. You've spent years, maybe lifetimes, trying to fix what wasn't wrong. You've been told to raise your vibration, to let go of your ego, to just focus on love. But what if your darkness wasn't an obstacle to love, but its origin? What if the deepest, most terrifying parts of you hold the exact blueprint of who you were always meant to become? What if the shame you carry isn't yours, but inherited from generations of silenced power? What if your rage isn't dangerous, but sacred? What if your grief isn't weakness, but wisdom still ripening? This is the rebellion the love and light crowd fears, the rebellion of radical self-acceptance. Because when you stop negotiating with your shadow, when you stop seeing your darkness as a problem to solve, you become something they can't predict, control, or define. You become whole. And wholeness is the most dangerous frequency in a world built on fragmentation. Because wholeness doesn't need approval. It doesn't seek permission. It doesn't follow trends or teachings, it remembers truth. Think about it. Everything you've survived, every breakdown, every abandonment, every internal war, it's all been leading you to this realization. You were never meant to be a carbon copy of enlightenment. You were meant to be a living paradox, a walking contradiction, a soul that bleeds and heals in the same breath, that loves with fire and weeps with thunder, that can chant mantras and still scream into pillows. That can sit in stillness and still crave chaos. That's not dysfunction. That's depth. And depth is where true power lives. Not in the curated image of the perfect healer or guru. Not in the polished posts or filtered smiles. But in the raw, unfiltered, unedited spaces where your soul speaks in its native tongue, darkness and all. Your final rebellion is giving yourself full permission to be everything. Not just your light, not just your love, but your edge, your intensity, your psychic knowing, your emotional storms, your sacred anger, your sensuality, your silence, your chaos, your clarity, all of it. When you stop trying to exile parts of yourself, you stop playing the game they've set up for you. You stop chasing enlightenment and start embodying truth. You realize that the shadow wasn't blocking your path, it was the path. And now, you walk it not with shame, but with sovereignty. You don't hide anymore. You own it. You walk into rooms with the full weight of your soul and let the energy speak before you do. And those who are ready will recognize you not because of what you say, but because of who you are. So let me ask you, one last time, the question that only the brave can answer. What if you stop trying to become something and simply let yourself be everything you already are? What if your darkness was never the enemy, but the doorway? What if the very parts you've been told to silence were the codes to your liberation and the liberation of others like you? Because here's the truth they never tell you. When you finally embrace your darkness, you stop seeking the light. Not because you don't want it, but because you are it. You realize the light was never separate. It was always inside the shadow, waiting for you to come home. And now that you've returned, you don't need to explain yourself. You embody yourself. Fully. Fiercely. Finally. You are not broken. You are encoded, not cursed, called, not too much. Just enough to break the spell of a world that forgot what real power feels like. And now, you remember. And now, you rise.